گردهمایی بزرگ 18 ژوئن، پیروزی عدالت، حفاظت از اشراف. پاریس 28 خرداد 1390. سخنرانی‌های شخصیت‌های برجسته سیاسی از کشورهای مختلف جهان.
Welcome everybody. Maridani Hastam. Man Ashrafi Hastam. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to start the program today, and I welcome all of you. We have many distinguished guests coming from across the world, from the United States, Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Over 30 parliamentary delegations are with us this afternoon from different countries representing a majority of their parliaments in Congress. I welcome all of you to this historic occasion, gathering support for the Iranian people's resistance for democracy under the leadership of Madam Rajani. Viva Madam Rajani! Viva Ashraf! Today, all of you who are gathered here are speaking with one voice, and that voice can be heard all the way to Tehran. Today is a day of solidarity. Today is a day of camaraderie. Today we all are behind the campaign to free Ashraf and to protect its residents. Ashraf, Ashraf, Azadi! Ashraf, Ashraf, Azadi! Ashraf, Ashraf, Azadi! Ashraf! Elie Wiesel speaks across generations to what happens when people are silent. Elie Wiesel says he won't be silent in the face of Camp Ashraf, and he speaks with you today. Let me just say what an honor it has been for me to preside over this part of the program. I want to say, Ashraf, Ashraf, Sharei Sharaf.
پروفسور الی ویزل برنده جایزه صلح نوبل ملقب به پیام‌آور انسانیت از بازماندگان آشویتس و کوره‌های آدمسوزی هیتلر، نویسنده 57 کتاب و عضو شورای بین المللی حقوق بشر در نیویورک است که تمام زندگی خود را وقف دفاع از حقوق بشر کرده است. او نامدارترین چهره جهانی مدافع قربانیان جنایت علیه بشریت و قتل عام هاست که از قربانیان آپارتاید در آفریقای جنوبی تا قربانیان قتل عام در بوسنی و قربانیان نسل کشی در آمریکای لاتین در برابر جنایات جنگی پیوسته به پا خاسته است. پیام‌آور انسانیت در دنیای معاصر بر اساس تجربه‌اش از اردوگاه‌های مرگ یهودیان و دیگر قربانیان فاشیسم هیتلری، اکنون از مخالفان سرسخت فاشیسم مذهبی حاکم بر ایران است که بارها فریاد احمدی نژاد شرم بر تو سر داده و اکنون به یاری مجاهدان اشرف می شتابد.
Thank you very, very much. I'm very impressed with this tremendous outpouring. And how about we follow an Arab Spring with a Persian summer? By a regime change in Iran, if it's in the interests of America and the West to remove Mubarak and to intervene against Gaddafi to protect the people of Libya, what about protecting the people of Iran? Who need it even more? We need regime change in Iran more than we do in Egypt or in Libya. And just as much as we need it in Syria. The regime in Iran has killed hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people. In front of the whole world, they just killed 33 people in Camp Ashraf just on April 8th. In the words of Senator John Kerry, in a massacre. And beyond its own borders, the regime in Iran is more dangerous to the United States. than Egypt or Libya. They've held hostages. They've killed millions. They've intervened in Iraq and perpetrated the murder of American soldiers. They are the biggest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and they want to be a nuclear power. What more do we need to say that in this era where we are embracing freedom, that it's about time to get rid of Ahmadinejad, to get rid of Khomeini, to get rid of the mullahs, and to give Iran a chance for freedom. How can it be terrorism to support freedom of religion, freedom for women, a free election, a rule of law, and a nuclear-free Iran? We're on your side and you're on our side. We're together. Your values are American values. And as we work for regime change in Iran, which has to be our work, let's not forget the people of Ashraf. The massacre of April 8th, 2011 is not isolated. It's happened before, and if we don't do something, if America and the world doesn't do something, it will happen again. The United States High Commissioner for Human Rights said there's no possible excuse for this number of fatalities. People were crushed to death by vehicles and murdered in cold blood. Part of the justification for this massacre is because we still list in the United States the PMOI and the MEK as terrorist organizations. They've been delisted by the European Union and the United Kingdom. And listen to the words of the investigative magistrate of Paris, written on May 11th. Activities of the PMOI reflect the natural and inalienable right to resist tyranny, stated in Section 2 of the Declaration of Human Rights and Citizenship. I believe, with both retired Generals James Jones and General Peter Pace, that we should delist the MEK and the PMOI immediately. We must recognize that this mistake of history that has been rejected by the European Union, rejected by the United Kingdom, rejected right here in Paris, that this mistake of history is being used as an excuse for murder. So let's stand together for delisting MEK, for closing Ashraf once and for all, for regime change in Iran, for a free, a democratic, and a decent Iran, one that is nuclear free. We can accomplish that I know that you will succeed in bringing to your people and to your country what we desire for you: freedom, democracy, and decency. God bless you, and thank you for your sacrifice. Congressman Kennedy. You know, I need to introduce the man who introduced me. Congressman Patrick Kennedy is the son of the late Senator Ted Kennedy, who was a leader in the struggle for human rights around the world. And his son, Congressman Patrick Kennedy, carries on his leadership. Thank you, Patrick. And Mrs. Rajavi, I bring you greetings and support from the Congress of the United States. And I bring the prayers for and the commitment to the brave residents of Camp Ashraf. We are with you. And as we mark the 30th anniversary of the start of the resistance against the religious tyranny ruling Iran, the whole of the Middle East and parts of North Africa are in revolt. People young and old, men and women, have risen against the decades-old dictatorships that denied the people of those countries their basic liberties and rights. Indeed, the winds of a new spring, one of freedom, democracy, human rights, and tolerance, are blowing. Of course, what has become known as the Arab Spring was started 2 years ago, as millions of Iranians from all walks of life took to the streets across your country, rejecting religious dictatorship and demanding freedom. The memory of one brave woman, Neda, is still with us today. And while the despots in Tehran use the heavy hand of repression to crush the protests, they fail to extinguish the burning desire for freedom. And that freedom will come to Iran and elsewhere across the world. I want to tell all of you that are gathered here today, and the millions who are watching in Iran and across our world, the freedom fighters in Camp Ashraf, that the Congress of the United States stands by you in the struggle for democracy. We ask our president to more openly reach out to the Iranian people and their democrat and organized opposition, which is today represented by all of you, by Madam Rajavi, and by the 34 brave residents of Camp Ashraf. And we especially ask that the MEK be removed from the State Department list of foreign terrorist organizations. This will happen. This will happen. The laws, the facts are on our side. Following the removal of the MEK from the list in Great Britain and the EU, and after the French judiciary
dismissed all the trumped-up charges of terrorism against your movement a couple months ago, there is no reason at all for our country to continue with the unwarranted and unjustified designation of the MEK any longer. The court in Washington has spoken. A distinguished roster of American officials has spoken. We in the House of Representatives have spoken. It is time to delist the MEK, and this will happen. Let me say a few words directly to our brave friends in Ashraf. We watched in horror as the massacre perpetrated by the Iraqi forces at Ashraf in April. At the same time, we were left with awe, watching your courage and bravery while bullets were coming at you. And today, like all days, we stand with you. We stand with you in Ashraf. It was appalling. It was wrong that the Maliki government, just a week ago or so, prevented a U.S. delegation of my colleagues from visiting Ashraf. The United States cannot remain silent, cannot sit idly by until another massacre happens at Ashraf. We are responsible for what is happening there. Mrs. Rajavi laid out our international obligations. So we must avert another tragedy. So the State Department of the United States must do two things. It must delist the MEK and ensure the protection of Camp Ashraf. So I want to congratulate Madam Rajavi. We will succeed. In the American Civil Rights Movement, we would sing, "We shall overcome." And I know in Farsi, you say, "Mitavan vaboyad." Mitavan vaboyad. Thank you.
Mrs. President, dear friends, and most of all, dear residents in Ashraf City. It is a privilege and a pleasure to address you again in our big annual rally of Iranian Democrats arrived from all continents. Every year, when I come to Paris in late spring to meet you, and I look to the many thousands, this year more than 80,000 good Iranian people, united in their common purpose to bring freedom and democracy to their country, I realize how powerful your movement is. And I understand why the tyrants that have been oppressing Iran for the last 3 decades are so afraid of you and dedicate so much effort to build around you a wall of lies and fabrications. But fortunately for Iran, and unfortunately for their oppressors, we are also thousands in Europe, in America, and in the Middle East, in parliaments, in municipalities, in civil society, that know the truth about the National Council of Resistance of Iran. We are thousands that declare clearly and loudly that we are proud to be your friends, that we consider a privilege to fight hand in hand with you to combat the most atrocious regime that this planet has known since the times of Nazism and Stalinism. Let me now turn my thoughts and my deepest feelings of affection and admiration to our front line, to our heroes, to our martyrs. Let me embrace, separated by the physical distance, but close in the heart, to the men and women in Ashraf City. Their generosity, their courage, their determination are an inexhaustible source of inspiration for all of us. Dear friends of Ashraf, if you are listening to me, if you are watching me, be sure that we are working intensively to ensure your security and to take you out of the dark prison that the Iraqi government, under the influence of the Mullah's regime, has made of what was until very recently a bright garden of freedom and hope in the middle of the desert. Parliament, we are urging the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign and Security Policy, Catherine Ashton, to lead the implementation of the plan proposed by the European Parliament delegation for Iraq, in full coordination with the United Nations and the United States, to transfer the residents in Ashraf to democratic countries, accepting to welcome them and ensuring in the meanwhile their security and the respect of their rights as protected persons under the Geneva Convention. And of course, any attempt to forcibly displace them to another location inside Iraq must be firmly rejected, because it would only pave the way for a new massacre and unduly delay the accomplishment of the Stevenson Plan. And dear friends, I do not want to put an end to this brief intervention without saying some sincere words to the Secretary of State, Mrs. Hillary Clinton. Dear Secretary, you are a woman of long political experience, of high moral standards, and of well-proven intelligence. A woman of these qualities must perceive neatly what is just and what is unjust, what is moral and what is immoral, and what is a good strategy and what is a wrong strategy. You will have to decide very soon on the delisting of the Iranian resistance. And this decision will reveal if you prefer justice to injustice, right to wrong, and the true defense of the legitimate interest of your great nation to fail appeasement policies that are only a waste of time. The NCRI and the POMOI are not terrorists. They are our allies and friends, and they are the strongest, best organized, and more motivated democratic opposition to the fanatical and aggressive dictatorship of Iran. They deserve to have a fair treatment, and it is your moral and political duty to delist them. In the European Union, they have already been cleared by independent courts of justice under the rule of law. It is now time for the United States to do the same, and to do it now. Dear Mrs. Rajabi, dear friends, our struggle for democracy and freedom in Iran has still a long way ahead until the final victory. We all know that it will not be an easy way, but you are not alone in this endeavor. Your friends in the European Parliament will always be very close to you, both in pain and in joy, in moments of pessimism and in moments of optimism. Always together until the sun of freedom shines in a cloudless sky on the sacred land of Iran. Because, as the great Spanish poet Salvador Espriu wrote once, a man is not a man if he's not free. Long life to Ashraf as the great symbol of Iranian resistance. Long life to our president, Mariam Rajabi. Viva el Irán libre!
Distinguished fellow guests, and all you, including especially you right at the very back, Can you hear me at the back? Wave! But the most important people here with us today are some thousands of miles away on the edge of a desert. Salam Ashraf. You are the bravest of the brave, using your strong voices to let those millions in Iran who cry freedom know that you stand with them and they do not stand alone. Despite the murderous attacks upon you by armed thugs in Iraqi and Iranian Quds uniforms, despite this brutal savagery, you stand tall and defiant, signaling to those inside Iran that freedom cannot forever be denied, only delayed. And as events in Bahrain, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran demonstrate, the more a regime turns to violence against those demanding democracy, the weaker that regime is. Violence against its own people never saved any regime on this planet. Iraq's Prime Minister Maliki, like his sponsors in Tehran, stole the parliamentary election, denying people there the leadership for which they voted. That is why, in clear and deliberate breach of undertakings he gave to ensure the safety and security of Ashraf residents, Mr. Maliki is now helping his mullah masters to demolish Ashraf, killing and wounding female and male residents indiscriminately. The world can no longer avert its eyes from the crimes against humanity that Maliki has ordered and carried out. Neither he nor the mullahs can be allowed to win. Ashraf will live. And as Mrs. Rajavi so well said, arguments that Iraqi sovereignty must be respected are merely an excuse for not taking action to end the war crimes committed at Ashraf and to prevent those others now being planned. I tell Mr. Maliki this: Iraq, like every other member of the United Nations, has a solemn duty to assist in preventing crimes against humanity, let alone an humanitarian obligation. As defenseless protesters in Syria are slaughtered, the EU, the US and others move to impose sanctions on that country's leadership. When Colonel Gaddafi answers demands for democracy in Libya by slaughtering civilians, a coalition of EU states, the US and the Arab League bombs military targets. Why not similar action to underline the rhetoric against Iraq's illegitimate leaders? Why no move to ask the UN Security Council to prevent further atrocities? Why not punitive sanctions against the leadership of both Iraq and Iran, who share equal guilt for what is happening in Ashraf and what is being planned? Iraq and its masters across the border have demonstrated contempt for international humanitarian law by murdering Ashraf residents at will, injuring others, and denying them access to medical treatment and supplies. I have to ask my government and others, what other crimes do Iraqi and Iranian forces have to commit at Ashraf before action is taken to stop them? What other crimes must they do before you stand up and insist that they stop this slaughter? And I have a direct question for Mr. Maliki as well. If you claim to have done nothing wrong at Ashraf, and are not planning to do so, why not allow a group of parliamentarians from around the world to see for themselves? You've denied access to a delegation from the European Parliament. You denied access a couple of weeks ago to a delegation from the American Congress. If you've nothing to hide, Mr. Maliki, then you've nothing. If you've nothing to fear, Mr. Maliki, then you've got nothing to hide. I also have to ask if these brutal actions by the Iraqi government against Ashraf are what they think British and other coalition troops gave their lives for or suffered dreadful injuries. Is this the democracy, the best that Iraqis are allowed to build? I don't believe it. Neither we here, nor those listening to us, nor those at Ashraf will be silenced. We will continue to demand that the UN acts to prevent the 21st century's version of the Nazis' hideous final solution at Ashraf. Now all together, no, just a minute, no. I want you all to say this after me. Ashraf will live. Iran will be free. Ashraf will live. Iran will be free. Thank you.
President, I know that I am speaking in this audience to people who have suffered gravely, who have suffered the loss of relatives, who have suffered torture, who have suffered exile in the cause in which you deeply believe. The justice of your cause is demonstrated beyond doubt by the sufferings that you all have endured. Iran is perhaps the world's oldest civilization, whose learning, whose inventiveness has laid the foundation for the civilization and the prosperity that we enjoy throughout the world today. It is fair to say, I think, that the present regime, unfortunately in Tehran, with its executions, its oppression, its suppression of religious freedom, its use of torture, devalues a great civilization and devalues a great heritage of the Persian and Iranian people. The present regime in Tehran offers no constructive vision of the future, just a futile attempt to return to an imaginary conformist past, a past that never actually existed and never will. Their policy of blind conformism is a cul-de-sac and a dead end. The siege and the massacre at Ashraf is a shame on the government of Iraq and on the Iraqi army. It was a breach of the Geneva Convention. It was a breach of international law and a betrayal of all those who put their lives at risk and lost their lives to bring freedom to Iraq. That the European Union should cease to give all financial and technical assistance to the government of Iraq until the government of Iraq allows the people at Camp Ashraf to be free. And with you I pray for the success of your peaceful struggle for freedom, for equality, for the supremacy of the people's vote, and for the rule of law to be restored in the great country of Iran. Thank you very much.
Gentlemen, I would like to address you all as members of the pro-democracy movement for Iran. It's a great pleasure to be here today to see this enormous gathering of pro-democracy Iranians and their supporters. All the people who truly support a free and democratic Iran. I congratulate you on this magnificent event today. In my country, Iceland, as in the other Nordic countries, there is a lot of support for your cause. I can assure you that we support you in calling for a regime change and for a government representative of the Iranian people chosen in free and fair elections under the rule of law. A majority of our parliamentary members have signed the statement that was announced and introduced here today, along with the statements by many other parliamentarians. We stand behind you. We know, dear friends, that the people of Iran want a regime change. They all desire a peaceful transfer of power. The so-called third option proposed by Madam Rajavi is a realistic option for democratic change by the Iranian people and their resistance. And the 10-point plan for Iran, a nuclear-free Iran, has been presented a few years ago, among others, to the Council of Europe, and it is a magnificent blueprint for the peaceful transfer of power under the rule of law with unimpeded freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, religious freedom, and other such basic rights that are sought and cherished by supporters of democracy all over the world, including and not least all the basic rights for women in all walks of life. We must support all relevant moves in this direction and push for the regime change that has become so necessary. I wish you all the best of luck in your important work. In particular, good luck to Madam Rajavi. I can see that with the support that we have seen here today, with the magnificent backing of the Iranian resistance movements, like we have seen here today in Paris, there is only one way forward, and that is the way to victory. Long live the free and democratic Iran. Vive l'Iran libre et démocratique.
Supporters of human rights for every human being, because you are fighting not only for your own country, for your compatriots, you are fighting for all human beings in the world. Thank you very, very much. me express. To be participant of this assembly is convincing me once more. Human beings, people are able to make a change, and do not mistrust but believe in you and your power, because we are always undermined. Much more, I would say. Thanks, big thanks to your main leader, Marisha. And I think that she has overcome all the attacks, also not only from the US, also from other countries. For a short time, MEK was also on the German list, but it's no longer. And there you can see law, rights have such a power that you can overcome all these attacks. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much once more, Maryam Rajavi, a female leader, but she's understanding herself. Women and men have to do it together. But let me say, just at the moment where we are seeing what women have done and could done, don't hesitate any longer to be strong women, because I saw and I had many women leaders, if they live in Germany, in US or other European countries worldwide, they showed us how strong they are working against torture, against violating human rights. And when I saw a slogan, women, stand up, rise up, don't hesitate after this day, it's worthwhile that we fight together. Elderly ones and younger ones, all generations here together. And let's work, not only speak about Ashram, because as long they can continue what they did with Ashram, killing people, bomb attacks, torturing. We can't be silenced. Let's stand up in the European Parliament, in our national parliaments, within the NGOs, and let's overcome this awful dictatorship against human beings. I'm really convinced what I heard today, what I saw today. Let's go for overcoming this miserable dictators and be strong, and let's fight together. We need one another. Thank you very much.
Mes amis, cela fait maintenant ça fait au moins 7 ans que je viens ici tous les ans dans ces réunions, et chaque fois, tous ensemble, nous avons protesté contre les infâmes poursuites qui se déroulaient en France. Oui, nous disions qu'il était scandaleux de dire que ceux qui avaient usé de leur droit à la résistance contre un régime tyrannique soient traités de terroristes. Nous savons bien comment les terroristes et ceux qui font régner la terreur traitent ceux qui s'opposent à leurs actes infâmes le mot de terroriste. J'étais enfant lorsque j'ai vu sur les rues de Paris l'affiche rouge où le résistant arménien Manouchian était traité de terroriste. J'ai entendu toute ma vie traiter de terroristes ceux qui résistaient. Et je suis heureux aujourd'hui de saluer la décision d'un juge français qui enfin a eu le courage de dire que les poursuites commencées le 17 juin 2003 étaient des poursuites intolérables et que ceux qui étaient poursuivis étaient en réalité des résistants. Mais ce n'est pas parce que ces poursuites ont été abandonnées, ce n'est pas parce qu'on ne fera pas le procès ridicule que l'on voulait faire que nous sommes au bout de notre combat. Nous savons, nous, ce qu'est la résistance du peuple iranien. Nous avons des vieux, je suis un vieux militant, je suis un vieil avocat. Je crois que depuis que je milite, le peuple iranien a été au cœur de nos débats et de nos luttes. Comment ne pas me rappeler du soutien que nous apportions à ceux de la première résistance qui étaient ici lorsque le Shah d'Iran et la SAVAK poursuivaient le peuple iranien. Nous les avons vus partir, ces résistants, heureux de croire que leur peuple était enfin libéré. Nous les avons vus mourir et nous savons qu'aujourd'hui, sous le régime abominable des mollahs, les résistants continuent à mourir, à être pendus, à être torturés. Eh bien, ici, je veux, au nom des militants français, au nom des avocats français, saluer tous ces résistants, tous ceux qui meurent, toutes les familles de ceux qui sont pendus, tous ceux qui sont torturés. Oui, la résistance iranienne finira par l'emporter, mais nous savons qu'aujourd'hui, ceux qui dirigent, les criminels qui dirigent le pays, continuent leur massacre. Oui, il a fallu que nous obtenions en Europe le retrait de la liste terroriste. Oui, il a fallu que nous obtenions l'abandon de ces poursuites. Mais comment oublier aujourd'hui ceux qui à Ashraf meurent? Comment oublier la complicité du monde, le silence du monde devant ces massacres inadmissibles? Et je m'adresse ici un instant à M. Obama. Oui, M. Obama, vous avez été à un moment, pour nous tous, l'expression du rêve américain. Oui, nous croyons que le peuple américain n'est pas complice de ces crimes, mais vous ne pouvez continuer à laisser inscrit sur la liste des terroristes et à justifier ainsi le massacre qui se déroule à Ashraf. J'en appelle au peuple américain, j'en appelle au président américain, j'en appelle au peuple du monde. Certes, ils ne sont que quelques milliers, mais massacrés simplement parce qu'ils sont des résistants, ils sont l'expression des résistants du monde entier. Nous avons vu les peuples arabes se lever, nous avons vu l'immense espoir qu'a fait naître le départ de ces tyrans terroristes qu'était M. Ben Ali, qu'était M. Moubarak. Demain, nous verrons partir Kadhafi. Demain, nous verrons partir ceux qui aujourd'hui massacrent leur peuple. Eh bien, nous savons aussi que demain, les mollahs iraniens partiront. Alors arrêtez dès aujourd'hui de massacrer le peuple d'Ashraf. Nous sommes tous responsables. Il faut cesser de traiter les résistances de terroristes et il faut de toute leur force que nous soutenions le grand peuple iranien qui finira bien un jour par reconquérir la liberté et pour reprendre sa place au milieu de tous les peuples du monde qui ont su se libérer du terrorisme et de l'oppression. Vive le peuple iranien!
انتشار گزارش‌ها از گردهمایی بزرگ ایرانیان در 18 ژوئن 28 خرداد در پاریس توسط رسانه‌های کشورهای عربی و اروپایی همچنان ادامه دارد. تلویزیون رویتر در یک گزارش مبسوط از گردهمایی بزرگ مقاومت ایران گفت در یک گردهمایی توده‌ای در نزدیک پاریس که در حمایت از ساکنان کمپ اشرف توسط شورای ملی مقاومت ایران برگزار شد، مریم رجوی رئیس جمهور برگزیده این شورا ابتدا از نماد یادبود شهدا بازدید کرد و گفت
Mais il faut continuer, il faut faire pression sur le gouvernement irakien pour accepter les règles internationales, les responsabilités devant les résidents d'Ashraf parce qu'il a accepté les comportements humanitaires devant les résidents d'Ashraf. C'est pourquoi je pense qu'on peut réussir si on continue, spécialement si les pays occidentaux, Nations Unies, et United States et l'Union européenne continuent la faire répression sur le gouvernement irakien.
همچنین تام ریج وزیر امنیت داخلی دولت بوش به رویتر گفت در زمانی که من در دولت آمریکا بودم هرگز یک اقدام تروریستی از این گروه ندیدم.
Well, I think first of all, the United States needs to understand that as long as we keep them listed as a terrorist organization, the Iraqi government is going to use that as an excuse or as a rationale for the incursions into Camp Ashraf. It's a massacre. These are unarmed civilians. It's the most fundamental violation of human rights, killing unarmed civilians, men and women. And so what I think is absolutely essential is we remove that justification, as disgusting and as despicable as it is, that they're using for this outrageous conduct. And then the United Nations will need to find a way to protect them until we find a safe haven for them around the rest of the world. When we think about Iran, 68, 70 million people, more than half are under 30 years of age. I mean, this is a repressive regime. I mean, people are talking about the Arab Spring, but there have been two massive protests over the past couple of years in Iran, and nobody seems to be paying attention. And it is almost an afterthought for many policymakers. But at the end of the day, after the UK delisted them, the EU has delisted them, the expressions of concern from governments are just not enough. There needs to be action taken. At the end of the day, the terrorist organization that the United States should be worried about is Iran.
گزارش رویتر می‌افزاید در این گردهمایی همچنین اعضای کنگره آمریکا، هیئت‌های پارلمانی از چندین کشور عضو اتحادیه اروپا و کشورهای عربی شرکت کردند. یک هیئت پارلمان اروپا در ماه می از عراق بازدید کرد، اما به آن اجازه بازدید از اشرف داده نشد. این هیئت پس از بازگشت از عراق پیشنهاد کرد ساکنان به اروپا و آمریکا و در صورت امکان به کانادا و استرالیا منتقل شوند. تلویزیون رویتر در پایان گزارش خود تصاویری از صحنه‌های حمله نیروهای عراقی به اشرف در روز 19 فروردین را پخش کرد و گفت طبق گزارش ملل متحد در تاریخ 8 آوریل حمله‌ای از سوی نیروهای عراقی علیه کمپ اشرف صورت گرفت. منابع سازمان ملل متحد شمار کشته شدگان در اشرف را 34 تن اعلام کردند.
تلویزیون BBC بخش عربی. مریم رجوی در یک سخنرانی خواستار قرار دادن قرارگاه مجاهدین خلق ایران در شمال بغداد تحت نظارت سازمان ملل شد. در این گردهمایی همچنین شخصیت‌های سیاسی اروپایی و آمریکایی شرکت کردند. فکر می‌کنم که رژیم ایران نسبت به گذشته بسیار ضعیف‌تر شده است و ما خوشبین هستیم که خیزش‌ها در ایران ادامه می‌یابد. مردم ایران بر ضرورت حفاظت از ساکنان قرارگاه اشرف تاکید دارند، زیرا اشرفی‌ها سمبل پایداری و امید و اراده هستند.
ژورنال دو دیمانش چاپ فرانسه. رودی جولیانی جمهوریخواه از آمریکا، شهردار نیویورک در سال 2001 و دادستان سابق در پاریس از مخالفین رژیم ایران حمایت می کند و می گوید من 3 سال است که در کنار آنها برای این مبارزه متعهد شدم. من مبارزم به این خاطر است که رژیم ایران بیشک یکی از بدترین نظامها در جهان است. رژیمی بسیار بدتر از رژیم مبارک یا حتی اسد در سوریه که زنان را به اسارت می کشد، اقلیت‌ها را سرکوب می کند و یک خطر واقعی برای بقیه جهان است. من آمدم تا در یک گردهمایی که توسط شورای ملی مقاومت ایران سازماندهی شده است شرکت کنم. در مورد جنبش مجاهدین، این سازمان در اروپا در لیست نیست و در ایالات متحده نیز قرار است خارج شود.
العربیوم چاپ اردن. حدود 100,000 تن از هواداران اپوزیسیون ایران روز شنبه در ویلپند در حومه پاریس گرد هم آمدند و سازمان ملل، آمریکا و اتحادیه اروپا خواستار تأمین حفاظت ساکنان اشرف شدند. در این اجتماع که بزرگترین اجتماع ایرانیان در خارج ایران به حساب می آید، صدها شخصیت سیاسی و پارلمانی از جریان‌های مختلف سیاسی از بیش از 20 کشور حمایت و پشتیبانی خود را از اپوزیسیون ایران و دفاع از حقوق ساکنان اشرف ابراز کردند و بر ضرورت به رسمیت شناختن شورای ملی مقاومت ایران توسط جامعه جهانی تاکید کردند. مریم رجوی در قسمتی از سخنانش بر پایان پیگرد قضایی جنبش وی در فرانسه انگشت گذاشت و گفت حکم اخیر فرانسه اثبات مشروعیت و حقانیت مقاومت عادلانه مردم ایران است. نماینده پارلمان اردن نریمان روسان، رودی جولیانی شهردار سابق نیویورک، باب فیلنر نماینده کنگره آمریکا
از جمله سخنرانان در این گردهمایی بودند. روزنامه الدستور چاپ اردن: ده‌ها هزار تن از ایرانیان و اعضای کنگره آمریکا به اضافه گروه‌های پارلمانی از کشورهای اروپایی و عربی و تعداد زیادی از شخصیت‌ها و فعالین سیاسی و مسئولین بلندپایه در دولت فعلی و سابق آمریکا در گردهمایی بین‌المللی بزرگی در ویلپنت در نزدیکی پاریس در 18 ماه ژوئن شرکت کردند. این گردهمایی در حمایت و در همبستگی با ساکنان کمپ اشرف برگزار شد. شرکت کنندگان بر اقدامات ضروری برای حفاظت ساکنان اشرف و ضرورت به رسمیت شناختن مقاومت ایران تأکید کردند.
باريس طلب المجلس الوطني للمقاومة الإيرانية الجناح السياسي لحركة مجاهدي المعارضة بتوفير حماية دولية لمعسكر أشرف في العراق الذي تعرض له.
در پاریس شورای ملی مقاومت ایران خواستار حفاظت بین المللی از قرارگاه اشرف در عراق شد. طرفداران این جنبش در یک گردهمایی در پایتخت فرانسه 30مین سالگرد شروع مقاومت را گرامی داشتند. این تظاهرات قبل از نشست وزیران خارجه اتحادیه اروپا برگزار شد.
دعت رئيسة منظمة مجاهدي خلق الإيرانية المعارضة مريم رجوي إلى حماية مخيم أشرف. وقالت رجوي في اجتماع حاشد خارج باريس حضره نحو 15,000 شخص من المعارضين أنه يجب أن تغادر القوات المسلحة المخيم ويجب أن يبدأ تحقيق محايد في مذبحة يوم
تلویزیون البابلیه در عراق: مخالفان رژیم ایران و هیئت‌های پارلمانی اروپایی و عربی در یک گردهمایی به منظور تأمین حفاظت ساکنان اشرف شرکت کردند. در این گردهمایی مریم رجوی برای حفاظت ساکنان اشرف و شروع تحقیقات بی‌طرفانه در مورد حمله 8 آوریل فراخوان داد. روزنامه الزمان: ده‌ها هزار تن از هواداران جنبش اپوزیسیون ایران در تجمعی در نزدیکی پاریس به مناسبت 30مین سال مقاومت علیه رژیم ایران خواستار تأمین حفاظت بین المللی برای قرارگاه اشرف در عراق شدند. تظاهر کنندگان شعارهای ایران، اشرف، آزادی سر می‌دادند. در این تجمع شخصیت‌هایی مانند رودی جولیانی، شهردار سابق نیویورک، شرکت داشت. مریم رجوی رئیس جمهور منتخب شورای ملی مقاومت خطاب به تجمع کنندگان گفت: مقاومت هرگز خاموش نخواهد شد.
وحشت زدگی رژیم آخوندی در سالگرد 30 خرداد. بازتاب هراس‌آلود کهکشان ویلپنت، حمایت عظیم هموطنان و جامعه بین المللی برای حفاظت از مجاهدان اشرف و راه حل مریم رجوی برای ایران.